Hello and welcome to another episode of the CIRS Group podcast. I'm JC,
And I'm Barbara.
and today we are talking about mindfulness. Before we jump into the episode, just a reminder, we are not medical providers. We're not medical information. I think I said that a few episodes
Yes,
ago.
it
We're
made me
not
so
medical
happy.
information.
Yeah.
We are patients. We've read the CIRS textbook. We run a community of people who are healing from CIRS, but none of this should be taken as medical advice.
Yes. And today's topic, mindfulness, is one that I strive for and have striven for. That's not the word.
No, we're using striven for.
Okay. For a very long time. And it is for lots of reasons very difficult for me. So that's actually why I wanted to tackle this topic, to kind of collect all of the different tips and tactics for mindfulness in one spot. And the reason that this is important for people that are dealing with CIRS is that dealing with chronic pain and chronic illness in general it is a form of trauma. And when you go through trauma, your mind tends to want to dissociate, and as a way to protect you from the pain, that ongoing awfulness that you're experiencing on a day-to-day basis. Thank you, brain, for doing that. It's being protective, and we can all appreciate that. However, as we heal, and even as we are healing, being able to check in with ourselves at the physical level, be in touch with how we are feeling and what we're going through and our symptoms, as negative as they may feel, uh, is actually very helpful for the healing process for lots of reasons, but maybe most obviously, just to be able to track your symptoms and how they're getting better over time. The better you're able to notice and track that, the more positive the healing experience will be, and that will just, I think, compound on itself. So yeah, I just want to tackle this fun topic because I do think it's very important for people dealing with CIRS, and at the same time, unfortunately, very difficult for a lot of people who are dealing with CIRS.
Yeah. So my function stack. So if you're into like MBTI personality types, there are these things called if you get beyond just the personality type, you can learn about the function stacks. And it's basically all of the traits and all of the personality types are represented in each person, but they're in a different order. So my very dead last thing is sensory internal. It is really hard for me to connect with my body and understand what's going on in my body. And I remember when I first started to get really sick, I was texting people close to me and I was like, I don't understand what's wrong, but I feel like something big is coming. Like I'm pushing so hard, something is cracking. And that was right before, I was temporarily blind in my right eye and had to walk with a cane. Like wasn't connected enough to know what was happening to me. I just felt like something was happening to me. And then following that, going through CIRS treatment, and after about 6 months of treatment, I had resolved a lot of my symptoms, but I was still really angry all of the time. I was mad that this had happened to me. I was mad at the people around me if they tried to help me or if they didn't try to help me. It was just like irrational anger. And after getting bad news about a friend, I had one night of restless sleep. And the next day I had a flare of, past autoimmune symptoms that I originally had triggered from CIRS. And it was the first time I really realized how much power our brains have over our body. And that limbic system, what Barbara was talking about, that our brains protecting us and putting us into a fight or flight state because a lion is not chasing us, but that's what our body, interprets that trauma as. When we get into that fight or flight state, and when we're chronically ill and we're chronically in that state, we have to do the work to rewire our brains, to rewire the neural pathways to get out of the fight or flight state. And you might know that as limbic retraining. I think we did an episode on that previously, so we can link that down below. But for me, I got to a point where my physical healing was hindered by my lack of mindfulness, by my lack of repairing these neural pathways that had been rewired through my chronic illness. I do think that when I first started CIRS treatment, I tried limbic retraining as part of my treatment protocol, and it was just too difficult for me at that time. Like mentally and emotionally, I wasn't ready for it. And I think it took a certain amount of physiological healing for those practices to really start working. But I do wish I had started practicing earlier because it really is a practice. It's something you have to show up for every day. You're constantly moving the needle in terms of flipping from this negative fight or flight state to a positive mind state. And the more you do that, the more practice you have, the more the positive state becomes the default. This has been life-changing for me, so I can talk about this ad nauseum. But we should talk about some of the actual strategies people can use to start rewiring those neural pathways.
Yes, but before we go on to that, I do want to revisit that the MBTI stack that you mentioned earlier, because if you're listening and you're wondering, am I good at being in touch with myself? Because it's not something that I was even aware of being bad at. Because I also my introverted sensing is pretty far down. I don't know if it's dead last, but it's pretty far down.
Second to last.
Second, oh, thank you. Thank you for
You're
that.
welcome.
There you go. And the way that this plays out for JC and I is that JC and I have occasionally, you know, as some of you may know, we don't live in the same state, so we're not always together. But when we are together, we talk and we talk for a long time. And at some point, finally, one of us will break and say, I'm about to give myself a urinary tract infection because I'm waiting so long, I need to go pee. And that if you're the person who the moment you feel like you need to pee, you think, oh, I need to go pee, and you just excuse yourself like a normal human from a conversation and go pee, and you go take care of that internal urge, that's good. That's actually a good thing. That means that you're very in tune with what's going on inside. JC and I are not. So depending on what your personality type is, that is contributing to how good you are at it. And that leads me to my other thought. You were talking about practice, and that is such a perfect way to put it. There is no expert level. There's really there, I mean, I guess you could say there's a beginner level, but really the fact that you are showing up and doing means that you are doing it. Like, and that is all one can ask of oneself. Um, when you it's said a lot in yoga, which is one of my favorite ways to practice mindfulness. You just showing up to do yoga makes you a yogi. You don't have to like get the hardest version of the position possible. No, just the fact that you were there on the mat practicing makes you a yogi. So in the same way, that can be applied to any and all of the mindfulness techniques we're about to get into. But I just want to reiterate that you are already good enough. It's just the fact that you are even trying, that is it. That is the point right there.
Beautiful. Can we start with my favorite one?
Yes.
So my favorite one, and when I first started getting into limbic retraining practices, I didn't know that was what it was called. I just had this feeling because I was so angry that I needed to pursue more joy. And I'm cheap. Like I'm so cheap, you guys. So I went on my library app and I just Googled, like searched joy in my library app, and it came up with this book called The Joy Plan. We'll link it down below. It changed my life. I read it in like 24 hours. And it was like it flipped a switch for me. It was a night and day difference reading that book. And before I jump into my favorite thing, I just want to say that we're going to give you a smorgasbord of options here. And the limbic retraining practice or the mindfulness practice that's best for you is the one that you can stick with because it is a practice, because you do have to show up at the mat, the metaphorical mat every day. Whatever resonates with you most is what's going to allow you to do that practice. So it's ultimately going to be the most effective one for you personally. For me, that was gratitudes. I have tried meditation in the past. I am someone who has an internal monologue. I recently learned not everyone does, but I have an internal monologue. And so it's really difficult for me to just sit with my thoughts. I'm working on it, guys. But one thing I found super helpful, it's kind of like meditation in a way, but I would do written gratitudes for the first 5 to 10 minutes of my day. And I think that by having the focus of having to write it down was key for me, which is why I'm saying this in like contrast to meditation is it's more of like an active strategy because you are writing, which helped me focus. But the most amazing thing about this practice that I've been doing for like slightly over a year now is when I look back at my gratitudes that I started with and I look at my gratitudes now, it's not like I have more breadth of gratitudes. I'm not grateful that I haven't had that many more things added to my life in that time, but my breadth of gratitude has just deepened for these things that are fundamental to my life. So, an example would be my morning cup of coffee. And I would be grateful for that in the past. And I would just say, I'm grateful for my morning cup of coffee. But now I'm like, I am grateful for my morning cup of coffee. I'm grateful for this time and space that I make for myself to enjoy this hot beverage that tastes like deliciousness. And I can just be so much more grateful for the things that I already have. So I can't, this was my thing, so I can't speak highly enough of it about it. But yeah, definitely recommend gratitudes and just set a timer for yourself and kind of see what comes pouring out of you.
Yeah, I love that. And play with the time of day too. I actually really love the idea of doing it in the morning. When I've practiced this before, I was doing it as like one of the last things I would do at night. But I'm interested in how that would change my outlook on the day. I think I missed that setting the day in that mode that you got from doing it in the morning. So play with the timing on some of these things. Maybe midday is the best for you because you have a split shift, and that's going to be a really good tying tying your mind back into some kind of intentionality for yourself. So play with the timing on that, but I love that idea. And kind of along the same lines, it's something that I've done in the past, is journaling. And it was done in the morning. I read the book called The Artist's Way, which is a wonderful book, especially if you have leanings towards creativity. But one of the practices she illustrates and what she's most famous for in that book is the morning pages. And what she suggests is taking 15 minutes every morning and filling up, she recommends at least 3 pages of just pure stream of consciousness, no editing, nothing, just letting the thoughts come right out onto paper. And I haven't done that practice in a very long time, but it's a good reminder that maybe I should, because I do enjoy writing. I enjoy the self-reflection that happens while you're writing. And I loved that if I ever got stuck or if I ever felt like I didn't know what to write, or I started to get that kind of like pressure to write something good that makes you basically not come up with anything, I will write that. I feel pressure to come up with something really good and I don't know what to write and I'm just writing garbage right now and that's okay. Like I would write all of that. And it was a really nice way to kind of keep the engine moving. And I would eventually, of course, get back to, actually self-reflecting and writing something more real. So definitely recommend journaling if you like writing.
So I kind of touched on it, but I'll give meditation a more formal recognition. I know so many people really love this, and I have loved participating in more active meditations. I specifically love the kind of meditation, especially when I'm feeling like that internal angst or external pressure, like social pressure. I love the kind of meditation that has you strip away all of these identities that we learn that are placed upon us through social expectations or through our family, through family generational trauma, like removing all those identities and just stripping it all back, peeling away the onion and getting to like your true self. For me, that feels like a warm, fuzzy ball of love. I don't know what it feels like for other people. And then just kind of taking that place of myself, my true self, and then choosing the identities that I want to have for that day. Because at the end of the day, those identities do help us operate through life. And so, if I'm going through a period of time where I'm feeling a lot of pressure at work, I'm going to strip back to that self-love ball, and then I might put on the identity of somebody who's really competent at their job. I might put on the identity of someone who doesn't identify their self-worth with external validation. Like I can choose which identities I place back onto myself. That's the kind of meditation I really enjoy. But I think you've done more intentional meditation practices.
Yeah, I've tried. Meditation is a huge struggle for me. And I am gonna blame my ADHD brain, but it's just like some similar to your internal monologue, but mine is like to-dos or thoughts or just going off on a nut, like I'll start thinking about Princess Diana, like, just some completely random thing. And I'm supposed to be meditating, and then I'll get kind of upset with myself and judge myself. And it's that cycle. So it just doesn't feel very good for me. But I know that the more that I do it, the better I would get at it. What did help me was tuning into something more like a lead meditation. There are YouTube videos out there.
We did a podcast with Melanie from Meditation for CIRS, and our group has really raved about her meditations. And I feel terrible that I haven't attended one. I really should. It's just always been kind of something I avoided because it's hard for me, but like that would also be a really good, legitimate reason for me to attend.
Yeah, yeah, she has, I think it's Monday night still that she has one that people can drop in on. So we'll have a link in the show notes for that, but that would be a really great opportunity to get kind of led through meditation. But what I have noticed, and I'll transition from meditation, like sitting there and like, trying to calm your thoughts, or just noticing the thoughts and getting back to breath, that kind of meditation. The form that I have found it to be most helpful for me in is actually specifically hot yoga. And I used to find this in regular yoga. So when I started, I would just put on Yoga with Adriene. I'll link her.
Love her.
I'm sure everyone knows who she is. Huge YouTube channel. But I would just put on a YouTube video and do it right here in this room and have it playing on the monitor. And once I did that for probably about a year, maybe relatively regularly, a few times a week, or at least once a week. And I learned a lot of the positions and the vernacular, the names of the different positions. And then I found a yoga studio near me, and they specifically do hot yoga. Now, this is maybe dangerous for people with CIRS. I don't know, because it's hot. You want to make sure that they treat the flooring correctly, and that they've built the building appropriately to withstand the heat, and the potential humidity that comes from a bunch of people sweating, which is kind of gross. But for me, there are way more benefits than risk when I go there, because the heat and the difficulty of the positions and working on balance, which is very important for ADHD specifically, and also just uh, brain health. All of that works so well together to get me to focus on exactly what I'm doing in that precise moment, and not, my brain can't go off in a million directions. It has to pay attention to what I'm doing right then and there. So I love hot yoga. It's been fantastic for me. And then sweating is detoxing as well. So there's like a million benefits that I've enjoyed with hot yoga, and I definitely go at least once a week at this point. But yeah, can't recommend that enough for those that can tolerate it.
The movement strategy that brings me a lot of joy is walking my dogs. I live in Colorado. I'm really spoiled. So I have this gorgeous view of the Rocky Mountains, and my dogs have these bouncy, floppy ears that just, oh, so cute. And, we'll see like little birds and crows and squirrels and rabbits along the way. And it's just so good. And there's something about light filtering through tree leaves. It touches my soul. I love walking, and it's meditation in the sense of like there's a certain amount of awareness, and maybe because my dogs are there and I have to be mindful of them, it kind of does for you what hot yoga does, in that I have to kind of be in the moment, paying attention to what's happening around me, because I have a reactive dog, and he will lunge at motorcycles, he will lunge at people, he will lunge at rabbits, and so I think that helps bring me to a more mindful state. But also, I think just being out in nature, hearing the sounds of nature, wind through tree leaves, sunlight through tree leaves, just so good.
Yeah. And yeah, being in Colorado, it's the perfect place to do that. I have a lot of beige rocks around here, and I shouldn't say that. Vegas is beautiful. We're surrounded by mountains as well,
Are they
which is
paying you to
nice.
say that?
Nah.
Sounds like you're being forced.
I know. It's just so
Vegas is
freaking
beautiful.
beige. It's so beige, guys. Can we have color here? But yeah, leaves. If I had leaves to look at, that would be cool. But yeah, I love walking. Walking is a fantastic way to be mindful. I mean, just pay attention to what you're seeing, what you're looking at, the smells in the air, the noises, the things, little animals that you come across, everything that you just said, even the feel the ground under your shoes, any of that, the more that you can be aware of where you are and what you're experiencing, the better.
Another thing that was a game changer for me when I was just so disconnected from my experience in my body, and having anything more than a 5-minute gratitude practice in the morning felt really overwhelming to me. Like, how do you get started, right? Like, how do you even like start dipping a toe into this? As I set a reminder on my phone, it would pop up every hour on the hour and it just said vibe check. And because I am really bad at knowing what I'm experiencing in my body, it would be a moment for me to just focus and be like, okay, how could I be more comfortable right now? Do I need to pee? Do I need to get some water? Are my feet cold? Like, I don't, at that point in time, I didn't even have that level of mindfulness to be like, how do you feel in your body right now? So I would just, every hour on the hour, I would have that reminder come up and I would just be this mental check of like, how are we doing?
Yeah. No, that's perfect. And that kind of goes along with your the symptom tracker. You made a symptom tracker that's available to members of the CIRS group, and that's in the resource library for those of you who are there. And even just taking stock every day at the same time, preferably of your symptoms as you are healing from CIRS, hopefully, or even if it's before you start treatment and you're just kind of monitoring what symptoms you're experiencing, different types of pain, or the different levels of GI distress, or maybe today your brain feels a little clearer than it did yesterday, and that's cool. Like, what could have caused that? What did you eat recently? And you start to kind of investigate the environment and the things that you've done, the places you've been that may have contributed to either that bettering or worsening of your symptoms as you go along. So I think that I love that you are so organized and so spreadsheet loving as you are, to have come up with a symptom tracker, because that is a really helpful way to take a snapshot view of how things are looking over time as well, once you get, a few days or weeks into the process.
I do know that some people can almost have this like hyperfixation on their symptoms and the experience they're having in their body. I can't relate to that. I'm sorry. But I do know that for some people it feels like, okay, well, if I track my symptoms in the morning, then I'm just going to be really aware of them all day. I would make it almost clinical, like clinical in your approach. Like when I was training for a fitness competition, every morning I would step on the scale, but it was Bluetooth. So it would go directly to my phone. I wouldn't even look at the number. So you could even, enlist someone to help you if you want to do symptom tracking, but it feels, kind of distant from what feels good to you in terms of mindfulness. You could enlist someone to help you to just be like, it's like a flight check, right? Like before you take off, just read them off real quick and you give a score 1 to 5. If you are more of a fixation person, I would take more of a distant strategy to symptom tracking. But if you are someone like Barbara and I, where you would rather get a UTI than interrupt a conversation to excuse yourself to pee, then you might find symptom tracking a really great way to check in with yourself. Yeah, the last thing I'll say about this is that it really is a practice and there is really no perfection, right? There is no scale you're working towards, it's just you against you. There's, don't idealize this. It's going to be difficult and it's going to be frustrating, and there are going to be days you don't want to do it. And the days that you don't want to do it and you show up anyways are the days that are going to be your biggest wins down the line. So I just want to encourage you, like showing up even when it's frustrating, even when you're tired, like just do 2 minutes of gratitudes, do 2 minutes of journaling, I remember when I was really immobile, like I was trying to do yoga and Pilates, and that just felt so frustrating to me. But even if I could take a couple minutes to just stretch my body in whatever way felt good to me, like that's all you got to do.
Yep.
We're just going to lower the bar for everyone.
Yeah, make it intentionally easy. Make it so stupid easy that, I mean, it's almost laughable that come on, you can do that, right? You can do 1 minute, you can do 30 seconds of like paying attention to your breath, and like literally set a timer for 30 seconds if you have to. Start as small as you need to, no judgment on that. And you can always build up from there. And try different ways. Try as many of these strategies we've mentioned as you are interested in. And maybe you'll find one that really works well for you. Like I said, For yoga, I feel the benefits of that for the entire day, which is awesome. So, and I'm sure even more on other days, but yeah, just try whatever works, whatever interests you the most, and you'll find something that you can stick to, which is then going to work for you the best.
And we do have a full limbic retraining class in the CIRS group. So if you want to check that out along with other resources and support, you can join us over at theCIRSgroup.com.
We'll see you there.